as we venture into the last decade for the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030, World Press Freedom Day 2023 provides us with an opportunity to emphasize the role of freedom of expression and media freedom as enablers of all other human rights. Furthermore, to underscore the indivisible, interdependent, and interrelated nature of all human rights, looking ahead now is the opportune time to address the future of human rights and shape conversations around freedom of expression in the digital ecosystem and a rapidly evolving information environment. Now to our chairperson for today. Mrs. Gifty Afenyi-Dadzie. Thank you for that. Honorable Mrs. Gifty Afenyi-Dadzie is a leader in the media, religious, and financial business world with a strong will and capacity to undertake public service. Because of her outstanding contribution to public life, the state of Ghana in 2006 awarded her with the Order of the Volta Companion Division. She was made a member of the Council of State in 2004, making history as the youngest member ever. She is currently a member of the Governing Council of the National African Peer Review Mechanism, a member of the ECOWAS Council of the Wise, and a trustee of the COVID-19 National Trust Fund. She had a journalistic training at the Ghana Institute of Journalism and Radio Netherlands. She has a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of London and a Master's in Governance Leadership from the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. Ladies and gentlemen, she was also the Assistant Secretary of the Association of Women in Media, the President of the GBC chapter of the association, as well as the Vice President of the Ghana Accra branch of the Ghana Journalists Association. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1996, as a senior editor, having risen through the ranks from 1997 as an assistant reporter to begin her media activism, she contested for the position of Vice President of the GJA and became the first actually, to hold that position. Mrs. Afenyi-Dadzie progressed to become the President of the GJA, serving as an unprecedented tenure of 3 terms. This makes her the longest serving president, female president ever of the GJA. Her reign was credited with many guidelines, a lot, including conflict reporting, election reportage. Today, Mrs. Afenyi-Dadzie is the National Prayer Director of Aglo International, leading thousands and thousands of Ghanaians for monthly prayer intercessions meetings in Ghana. And this she started since 1999. Colleagues of the Inky fraternity, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, let's welcome our chairperson for today's function, Mrs. Gifty Afenyi-Dadzie. Let's give it to her, Mrs. Gifty Afenyi-Dadzie. Thank you very much, Auntie Gifty, if you proceed gently to the high podium. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, noble colleagues, and thank you, Becky, for the kind words. I'm very grateful to the GJA for this invitation. His Lordship Justice Sir Dennis Adjei, the GJA President and Executive, the Chairman of the National Media Commission, the UNESCO Country Representative, UN Coordinator, and other missions represented here, chief executives of media houses and other organizations such as GEBA, Premprag, ASWIM, representatives of the civil society organizations, friends from the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The local theme for this year's World Press Freedom Day is freedom of expression, a driver for all other human rights for Ghana's development. Obviously, this has been derived from the global theme. Freedom of expression has never been the preserve of the media. It is the oxygen driving democratic societies. No wonder the first issue tackled under Article 21 of the 1992 Constitution, that has been subtitled General Fundamental Freedoms, is freedom of speech and expression. For instance, the peaceful coexistence of religious groups is anchored in the right of citizens to express themselves in a way they find appropriate to express their beliefs. The Kumi Preko, Fix the Country, Arise Ghana demonstrations, Let My Vote Count, and the picketing by individual bondholders are all underpinned by freedom of expression, even if particularized as freedom of assembly. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the freedom of speech on our radio stations and the numerous newspaper publications bear testimony to the fact that Ghana is making tangible progress in democratic governance. The progress in the field of freedom of expression notwithstanding, I believe there are areas involving the media that require a more sober reflection. The media has been given a responsibility by the 1992 Constitution of the Republic to demand accountability. Article 162, Clause 5 is explicit that the mass media shall uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people of Ghana. One shining example in agenda setting and the demand for accountability has been the work of the Media Coalition on Illegal Mining, or Galamsey, which was launched in April 2017. The media played and is still playing its role in raising concern about the dangers of Galamsey, which threaten our existence as a people. Subsequent development has shown that the beneficiaries of Galamsey are very powerful and will not easily give up, irrespective of the danger to our water bodies and environment. On this occasion, it is relevant to remind ourselves that based on the happenings we know now, the agenda to stop Galamsey should be treated as a major existential threat that should go beyond the coalition that first highlighted the menace. I believe all media houses should continually highlight the challenges until the menace is brought to a minimum. Already, all of us are paying far more for water because of the pollution suffered by our water bodies and the increasing cost to the water company in treating the water for our homes and industries. In terms of our developmental challenges, it is my expectation that the Ghanaian media shall develop a strong interest in economic management of our dear nation and demand answers to nagging issues including corruption and incompetence, which have the potential to roll back our advancement as a country. A major drain on the country's finances is the performance, or rather non-performance, of some of our state-owned enterprises. Instead of contributing to the nation's revenue, a high number of such enterprises continue to incur huge losses that are invariably borne by the taxpayer. Colleagues, according to the 2022 State Ownership Report released recently by the Ministry of Finance, state-owned enterprises recorded a 2.6 billion cedi loss in 2020. As a country, we need a frank conversation on the performance of our state-owned enterprises to really understand what the issues are and the best way forward. Still on the management of the economy, we need to reflect also upon the mandate of Parliament and holding the executive to account. My candid opinion is that Parliament, while doing well in some areas of their mandate, has not been able, for whatever reasons, to effectively play its role as a countervailing force to the executive. A stronger collaboration between Parliament and the media would be a healthy way of keeping the executive on its toes, especially in between elections. Noble colleagues, in examining the constitutional provisions on freedom, one comes across the phrase, subject to the rights of others and the national interest. This is relevant to our national discourse. The heat is already building up towards the 2024 presidential and parliamentary elections. The peace of our dear nation needs to be safeguarded. And one of the surest ways to plunge a country into chaos is inflammatory language. The media should play its gatekeeping role so well that decency shall become paramount in the conduct of people that seek the mandate of the electorate to rule. Ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that media owners need seriously to reflect on the acquisition of delayed broadcast equipment to help sieve the contributions of those who call in to programs to make one contribution or the other, as well as a panelist who goes overboard to throw a bomb. One other organ that could help sanitize the political campaign environment is the GJ Ethics and Disciplinary Council, which is mandated to promote high journalistic standards among members of the association and the performance of their duties, enforce the GJA Code of Ethics, and investigate allegations of unprofessional conduct and ethical breaches of the association. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, increasingly, social media has assumed prominence and high patronage in Ghana, a challenge that goes beyond the GJA and which must be of paramount interest to all of us. And that is, how do we deal with the excesses of social media, especially in approaching the election year? It is true that most ideas generated in the public space are about sport, culture, fashion, gossip, and commerce, etc. But we know for a fact, however, that in an election season, many more will use social media to articulate their views on politics. We do not need new laws to regulate social media, but the GJA, working with all the relevant stakeholders, can monitor the public sphere and promote key ethical considerations.
Now, it's a very important subject which very often we don't pay much attention to. And I want to use a few minutes just to lay the foundation. This whole conversation about export is a big deal because it is the major avenue through which we earn hard currency. That hard currency, or the dollars or the yuan or whatever that comes from our exports, is what we use to service our import obligations. So whenever we need to import some of the necessities, fuel, medicines, whatever, that we don't produce here in Ghana that is imported, we have to rely properly so on our export earnings. Now, where our exports are low, it means that we will not have enough export earnings. And if our imports end up being higher than our exports, then there's a higher demand on the little foreign currency or hard currency to service our import bills. And when there's that higher demand as against the lower supply of the hard currency, what ends up happening is that the currency depreciates. So often when you see the currency depreciating, one of the major reasons is because we are not earning enough from our exports as against how much we are spending on our imports. And that is why the subject of exports is such a big deal for us. Now, in addressing this, a number of interventions have been rolled out to ensure that our export earnings go up. And that is why last year this report was presented to you, and this year this report is being presented as well, so that we can
Virginia Elliott, Public Affairs Counselor, representing Excellency Virginia E. Palmer, U.S. Ambassador to Ghana. His Excellency Charles Abani, UN Country Coordinator, representative of the head of EU delegation to Ghana, Mr. Ato Afo, Managing Director, Graphic Communications Group, my good brother, Professor Eric Opoku Mensah, Rector, UDMAC GIJ, ADB representatives here, Giba Print Park Executive Secretaries and senior journalists present, heads of media institutions, editors, media colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to this year's WordPress Freedom Day. I am sincerely grateful to all of you for making time to grace today's event with your presence. As many of us here may be aware, WordPress Freedom Day, which is marked May 3rd every year, is a special occasion designated by UNESCO to spread awareness regarding the role media plays in our daily lives and society. Madam Chairperson, it is worth noting that the 2023 WordPress Freedom Day in Ghana is being organized solely by the Ghana Journalists Association with assistance from the Ghana Police Service and DB. Following the advice from our long-term partner, UNESCO, to fish on our own. We would like to thank UNESCO for teaching us to fish. Self-dependence is very essential. The global team for WordPress Freedom Day 2023 is shaping a future of right, freedom of expression as a driver for all other human rights. Notably, this team coincides with the 30th anniversary of both WordPress Freedom Day and the Vienna Conference Declaration and Program of Action for Human Rights. The theme for Ghana's celebration, which is not too distinct from the global theme, is freedom of expression, a driver for all human rights for Ghana's development. Regarding the development of the nation, Madam Chairperson, the right to free expression is of the utmost importance, and all measures must be taken to ensure that it is not infringed upon in any way. Madam Chairperson, the GJA, along with Media Foundation for West Africa, GIBA, and Printpark, recently urged the government to amend certain provisions of the Electronic Communications Act and the Criminal Code, specifically Section 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act 1960 at 29. As critical stakeholders in the media industry, we cannot remain unconcerned as these laws are used to arrest citizens and journalists and prefer criminal charges over civil remedies for press and speech offenses that are merely defamatory. The arbitrary application of these laws only serves to instill fear in the general populace. One of our colleagues, Noah Nati Dame of Radio Ada, was recently detained for 7 days on false publication charges due to these bad laws. And this has affected our 2023 WordPress Freedom Index, our ranking on 2023 WordPress Freedom Index. Ghana has moved from 60 to 62. Ghana has moved from 60 to 62. Let's take note. 2 backwards. As the umbrella body of journalists in this country, Madam Chairperson, we will continue to ensure that any action or law that seeks to stifle free expression fails. Madam Chairperson, to ensure that free speech is always protected, it is essential that journalists who are the vanguards of free speech receive all the support they require to carry out their duties without hindrance or compromise. This is why, under the current administration, the GJA has established the Journalist Support Fund, JSF. The fund will provide legal services to journalists whose rights have been violated while performing their duties. It will also assist in providing training and seminars on safety and security to our members to improve their safety and security. The fund will also be used to support or cushion retirees. So some may refer to it as Retirees Support Fund. Since the inception of this fund several months ago, Madam Chairperson, it is crucial to know that so many privileged individuals and corporate institutions have shown interest. Some individuals and organizations have made substantial contributions to the fund. In the coming weeks, the GJA will inaugurate the See Something, Say Something initiative. This initiative is distinct from that of the Ministry of National Security and aims to encourage citizens to volunteer information about individuals who plan to attack or have already attacked journalists. We believe that this will substantially contribute to the reduction of journalistic assault. It will also empower citizens at the local level to ensure accountability and transparency. Madam Chairperson, being proactive is essential if you are to protect the right to free expression. And I must say that the GJA has been very proactive in recent years with regard to defending this right. We also caution media outlets when necessary. All of us are witnesses to how we managed Radio Ada versus the Ada Traditional Council when a reporter from that station was banned from participating in activities. The GJA had a press conference to condemn the council's actions and pointed out that they lacked authority to prohibit a journalist. A similar situation involving Oyedepo Radio and the Kumasi Traditional Council, Menchia, was promptly resolved. We are not suggesting that journalists are beyond reproach or that we are flawless. No, as stated previously, there are several remedies available to those who believe they have been treated unjustly by the media, and they can always utilize them. As captured in this year's World Press Freedom Team, the preservation of free expression has a trickle-down effect. When freedom of speech is jealously guarded, there will be no fear or panic because people will go about their duties without looking over their shoulders. Our democracy will prosper further if individuals can freely express their opinions. I must state that the GJA, together with its media stakeholders, has initiated processes to engage the President of Ghana, who is known in his private life as a human rights activist and advocate of press freedom, and the Attorney General as far as repealing the obnoxious laws which stifle free speech is concerned. I'm talking about the Electronic Communications Act and the Criminal Code, specifically Section 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, 1960, Act 29. Madam Chairperson, on this day, we cannot forget Ahmed Swale. Over 4 years after his gruesome murder, we continue to seek justice for him by putting pressure on the authorities concerned to up their game. Quite recently, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice disclosed that the docket on Ahmed Swale had not reached his office, considering the fact that his office has prosecutorial powers. The President also assured us at our dinner night last year, that's last December, that he's going to see to the closure of this case and ensure that perpetrators are brought to face the full rigor of the law. As an association, we will continue putting pressure on the police to conclude the investigation on the matter and submit the docket to the AG for necessary action. Let's come together as journalists and fight hard for a more liberated society. It is also essential to note, Madam Chairperson, that the celebration of WordPress Freedom Day next year will coincide with the GJ's 75th anniversary as an organization. We intend to organize significant activities to commemorate both occasions. As the political season approaches, I would like to exhort my media colleagues not to entertain politicians or individuals who will poison the atmosphere with intemperate and provocative remarks. Let's perform our professional roles while keeping the country's peace in mind. Permit me to also use this occasion to warn politicians who have a propensity for abusing journalists or stifling free expression that they will not go scot-free. And once again, they will not go scot-free. We are prepared to safeguard all media professionals as they perform their duties with diligence. Permit me to also finally we commit ourselves to promoting professional standards in the media and urge all journalists and media houses to uphold the highest level of integrity and professionalism. We will not hesitate to call out any journalist or media organization that indulges in flagrant violations of professional ethics and standards. This is in view of the recognition that press freedom and indeed all other forms of freedom go with responsibility and the duty to respect public sensibilities, human dignity, and public interest. Madam Chairperson, as I bring my remarks to a close, it is important to reiterate that the celebration of WordPress Freedom Day will become an annual charade if state institutions do not commit themselves to changing the narrative and maintaining the right of journalists for once. Once again, I said, Madam Chairman, I repeat that as I bring my remarks to a close, it is important to reiterate that the celebration of WordPress Freedom Day will become an annual charade if state institutions do not commit themselves to changing the narrative and maintaining the rights of journalists for once. Like I always say, journalists' lives matter. Journalists' lives matter. Long live GJ, long live WordPress Freedom. Thank you for your attention. God bless you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. A round of applause for him. Journalists' lives matter. Journalists' lives matter. Let's keep on being circumspect in our reportage, and politicians who go after us will also go after them. Thank you very much, Mr. President Albert Kwabena Dwumfour, for that inspiring speech. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 30th anniversary celebration of World Press Freedom Day here at the Ghana International Press Center, where Ghana is united with other journalists globally to mark this day, which we call our day. Thank you very much for being here. In a moment, we'll be introducing a few dignitaries who are joined us here. Some of them have already been, but we'll do the needful. Let me remind you that this program is being streamed live on GBC, Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, Facebook, Ketsi Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, Director General of GBC, Professor Amin Al-Hassan. I don't know if he's here, but Ketsi, Professor Amin Al-Hassan, we are having that stream. And it's also being broadcast live on our legacy media network, which is GTV, GBC News. For those of you who may not be aware, a new addition to today's program is what we call a book exhibition. We're having a books exhibition in this hall that is right behind me. It's called the Gifty Afenyidazi Hall. Gifty Afenyidazi Hall. For those of you who do not know and are much younger, this premises that we are today celebrating was secured during the tenure of the chairperson, Mrs. Gifty Afenyidazi. And so this hall right behind me has been named after her. That is the venue and the very building that is housing our books exhibition, that you would have the opportunity to go in there and have a taste of writings by our very own journalists, whose names we'll mention in in a jiffy. So just keep that on your tabs. That will be having a books exhibition that you can go there and sample the books. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Justice Dennis Dominic Adjei. It's Justice Court of Appeal who's joined us. We'll be introducing properly later on. Thank you very much for joining us. Let me also introduce, not in any particular order, the South African High Commissioner, Her Excellency Grace Mason. If you are here, give us a wave. Thank you very much. UNESCO representative in Ghana, Mr. Abdul Diallo. Abdul Rahman Diallo. Sorry, I butchered your name. Abdul Rahman Diallo. Thank you for being here with us on this day, World Press Freedom Day. And we have actually representing, not in any particular order, Deputy Director of Communications at the Judicial Service of Ghana, Rosemary Daisy. If you are here, thank you for joining us. Of course, I cannot forget Chairman of the National Media Commission, Mr. Yaw Boadu Ayeboafo. Thank you very much, Mr. Yaw Boadu Ayeboafo, for joining us today. Atu Afo, you are Managing Director of Graphic Communications. Thank you for being us. There are two people here who are the Ghana Journalists Association's representatives to the National Media Commission. If you are here, Mr. Kobi Asma and Gabi Gabriel Bosompim. Thank you very much for being here. And I'm sure as we go along, we'll acknowledge the others. Let me also say that we have in our presence Virginia Elliott, a Public Affairs Counselor from the U.S. Embassy. Her Excellency, Virginia Elliott. I cannot forget the UN Country Coordinator, His Excellency, Mr. Charles Abani. Thank you for being here with us. And we have representing the EU Ambassador to Ghana, Smith Van Gelder, Deputy EU Ambassador, if you are here. Thank you very much. Almost butchered your name there. So we'll be introducing the other dignitaries as we go along. Let's welcome to the podium the NMC, National Media Commission Chairman. He'll be speaking to us, Mr. Yaw Boadu Ayeboafo. Let me remind speakers that we have a broadcast time, and we've been told that it's 5 minutes or less. I've been told to mention Reverend Lawrence Tete. I didn't miss you. I was going to mention you later, but Reverend Lawrence Tete, thank you for joining us, International Evangelist. Thank you very much. Over to you. Thank you very much, Mr. Yaw Boadu Ayeboafo.
You don't count that against my time. Right, thank you very much. I am not very used to protocol. So I stand on the established protocol and say that we are happy that we are here today. And I want to begin from the perspective of our elders. I mean, there's a saying in my language that if you go to the barber and you do not talk, you get a bad shape. And I think that that is a philosophy that underlies the theme that we are discussing, that free expression is the driver of all other human rights. Because if you cannot express yourself, you may not know whether something is pinching you or something is happening against you and all that. And therefore, it is imperative. Actually, in my class, when I'm teaching in my class and I want to make an example of why everybody must speak, I usually say, and I've repeated it for all these years, and say that if a man does not speak, you will not know whether he's intelligent or otherwise. When it is only after somebody has spoken that you can decipher from whatever sentiment that he has expressed whether he has the capacity to join in the process that you are dealing with. And so everybody's speech matters, and we must understand that. Now, when we meet at forums like this, we want to emphasize on the right of people to speak, even though we also acknowledge that people have responsibilities, particularly because in the Ghanaian situation, our constitution is a social responsibility kind of constitution that requires under Article 41 that there can be no right without a corresponding obligation. And so it only means that any time that you talk about your right, you might be reminded of your responsibility. Yeah, but at functions like this, we want to stress on the fact that we have rights, and that it is the duty of our government, our people, to facilitate the processes whereby every one of us is able to express our views. Because when we are able to talk freely, we do not build, negative things within our heads. For instance, when we're young, when somebody offends you, and you can speak to that individual and say whatever you want to say, you say it and you offload it. Yeah, but when it was impossible for you to do that, what we used to do sometimes is to stand somewhere at the corner, take a stone, and when that individual was passing by, throw it at that individual. Because that is a way that you can also retaliate, because you cannot speak to that individual. It means that free speech is very, very significant. We must cherish and value it. And we must do everything that gives meaning to the question of our freely expressing ourselves. Because if we freely express ourselves and that degenerates into ethnic cleansing and the manner of all those things, then it means that we did not think about what we said. And so we have a responsibility to weigh the consequences of everything that we speak. But first and foremost, no one should stop us from expressing our views about anything. Now, I want to conclude on this, that, in recent times, a number of cases have come before the National Media Commission. And there's one trend. And the trend is that the excuse of the media, which we do not consider to be justifiable, is that when we call the person, he didn't speak. The mere fact that you called me and I did not speak does not commit me to a liability or a guilt. And we have a Court of Appeal judge here. Now, Article 19, Clause 10 of the 1982 Constitution expressly states that even when you are standing trial for a criminal offense, you can refuse to answer any question put to you by the judge. And the judge cannot, solely on the basis of the fact that you did not respond, convict you. So our appeal to our media people is this, that we must find better means of verifying our stories and not just basing it on the fact that when you call the person did not respond. If the response of that individual is the only basis why you are convicting that person, if that is the only reason why you are finding that person responsible or liable, then it only means that you are debasing the profession of journalism. You do not seem to understand what you ought to do. Because the maxim in the newsroom when we're there is that whenever that you are in doubt, spike the story. That it is better that you do not carry a wrong story and leave this thing than to carry one single story that is so inaccurate and that is not a reflection of the reality. So I want to leave you that let us fight for our freedom. Let us fight for the fact that we can express our views anywhere at any time. And this is not only about journalists. It is about every Ghanaian. We say that the life of the journalist matter. Yes, but I can tell you that the life of the journalist will matter better if the journalists consider the life of all other Ghanaians as also worthy of recognition. And that if we recognize that other Ghanaians matter, they will boost us. And they will create a better environment for our recognition so that we will receive double portions, whatever other people are getting. That is the responsibility that we must bear. And we should not fight for ourselves. We should fight for the people of this country. If there are any policies that are not good against the people of Ghana, including journalists, we must not narrow it as if it is a fight for journalists. We must fight it as a fight for every Ghanaian. That way, we will be recognized, and we will not be an appendage, but we will be part of the history of our country. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for him. Thank you very much, National Commission Chairman, Mr. Yao Wedu Ayeboafo. So we'll welcome to the podium Mr. Abdul Rahman Diallo. Mr. Abdul Rahman Diallo, he is representing UNESCO. Thank you very much, Mr. Diallo.
Thank you very much. I thought that you know my name very very well. No, this is my privilege to be here for the fifth celebration, the fifth consecutive celebration of World Press Freedom Day in this place. So, Madam Chairman, all protocol observed, dear participants, it's a great pleasure to be with you on the occasion of this celebration of World Press Freedom Day. We have to thank, and it's not taken for granted, we are all gathered here today, and all stakeholders are representative from the government, the right entities, the partners, and of course, beyond, and the most important, they are the practitioners, the media people. This is your day. This is your day. Thank you for all what you're doing every day. A huge medase to all of you for your work. Thank you. This is your day. This day is a reminder of the essential role that free and independent media play in our societies. Press freedom is a cornerstone of democracy and human rights. It's the foundation of a free, fair, and open society, and an essential condition for the protection and promotion of the right to freedom of expression. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the proclamation of the World Press Freedom Day, which was adopted by the 48th UN General Assembly following UNESCO's recommendation. This 30th anniversary, which is being marked in New York this year for the main celebration and the proclamation of the World Press Freedom Day and the international commitment to press freedom. Over the course of the last 3 decades, the global movement celebrating World Press Freedom Day has grown in scale and provided an inclusive platform to reaffirm the fundamental role of free, independent, pluralistic media to take stock of the challenges facing media freedom and the safety of journalists, to raise awareness and foster partnerships to defend media from attacks, as well as to pay tribute to journalists who have lost their lives in the exercise of their work. Yes. Originated in Africa, in Windhoek, in Namibia in 1991. And it's an opportunity to pay tribute and to recognize the contributions of Ghanaians, such as Mrs. Adjoa Yeboah Afari. She was one of the key stakeholders at this conference in 1991. Then we had the Dakar Declaration in 2005, the Maputo Declaration 2008, the 2018 declaration of Accra Declaration, where we celebrated the World Press Freedom Day, and most recently the 2019 Addis Ababa Declaration on Journalism and Election in Times of Disinformation. Finally, World Press Freedom Day returned to Windhoek, plus 30 in 2021 on information as a public good. It paid tribute to those who opened the path to help secure information as a public good. UNESCO and the UN system here in Ghana will continue to support freedom, access to information, and safety of journalists through capacity building of duty bearers and the rights holders. And one of our lead trainers in Africa on international legal standard on freedom of expression, access on information, and safety of journalists will deliver on this year's STEM, shaping a future of rights, freedom of expression as a driver for all other human rights. And we have recently published the media development indicators of the country, which guides the assessment of the media ecosystem and also help stakeholders appreciate the state of Ghana's media development. Justice Denis Dominic Adjei, Justice of the Appeal Court and the African Court, thank you for sharing your expertise and knowledge on freedom of expression and access to information. I would like also to express our profound appreciation to the Minister of Information for their continued support and the numerous civil society organizations for their work in freedom of expression space. Let me conclude by quoting from UNESCO Director General Madame Audrey Azoulay in her message on the occasion of the World Press Freedom Day 2023, which she said, 30 years after the first World Press Freedom Day, we can see how far we have come and how far we still have to go. So let this day be an opportunity to renew our commitment within international organizations to defending journalists and through them press freedom. So on this World Press Freedom Day, let's reaffirm our commitment to defending press freedom and protecting the rights of journalists and media workers. Let's work together to build a more just, equitable, and democratic society where the press is free to report on the issues that matter most without fear of persecution or retaliation. I wish all of us a fruitful World Press Freedom Day. Afi Shapa to all of you. Medase, oh, you are done. Thank you.
Thank you. Medase, thank you very much, Mr. Diallo, for that. Another round of applause for him. Thank you, Mr. Diallo. Let's remember that Mr. Mauli Segbefia is representing Mr. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, Minister of Information, at this event. Thank you very much, Mr. Segbefia, for being here. We have Betta Desemenu. She's representing the Canadian High Commissioner. If you are here, Betha, thank you very much for joining us. Okay, let me go ahead and welcome to the podium Her Excellency Virginia Elliott, Public Affairs Counselor, U.S. Embassy. Let me also note that Kevin Bosranhan is also here from the U.S. Embassy. Thank you very much, Her Excellency. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Madam Chair, Mr. President, please allow me to stand on previous protocols. Good morning. On behalf of Ambassador Palmer and the U.S. Embassy, I'm so pleased to celebrate with you today as we mark the 30th anniversary since the UN Declaration of World Press Freedom. I salute all of our friends in the media who are here today. This 30th anniversary edition is being celebrated around the world. Partners from the media, academia, and civil society are deliberating on the theme, Shaping a Future of Rights, Freedom of Expression as a Driver for All Other Human Rights. Our own Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, will commemorate this important day later when he helps launch the 2023 World Press Freedom Index. A free press is one of the most vital ingredients for any functioning democracy. For this reason, the founding fathers of the United States ensured that freedom of expression was the very first guarantee of our Constitution. It's also why the media are often referred to as the fourth estate. There may be 3 branches of government in democracies like the United States and Ghana, but where would we be if it were not for objective journalists and investigative reporters to hold our elected leaders accountable and who are free to represent a range of viewpoints on behalf of all citizens. A free, vibrant, and independent media is crucial. The U.S. Embassy continues to support media development institutions to build the capacity of Ghanaian journalists in fact-checking, investigative journalism, reporting on people with disabilities, and media literacy programs for young Ghanaians to improve their appetite for news and credible information. The Embassy's grant to the Department of Communications, University of Ghana, in support of its State of the Ghanaian Media report is one clear example of our ardent commitment to Ghanaian media. Aspects of the report included working conditions in media, media ownership, journalist safety. I recommend it to you as a useful roadmap for guiding our way forward on support to journalists. In 2020, the U.S. Embassy supported the Alliance for Women in Media Africa and the School of Information and Communication Studies, University of Ghana, to launch the status of women in the Ghanaian media. Again, providing evidence for equality and advocacy report. Based on a nationwide study of newsrooms, the report presented an overview of the profile of women in Ghanaian media, including the positions they occupy, career progression opportunities, and challenges and experiences with the issues of harassment and other human rights abuses. The findings in these two reports are catalysts for development organizations in the industry, government, academia, and consumers of news to spur improvements. We are currently witnessing a situation where media freedom, freedom of expression, and other human rights are under attack. Journalist safety is a major concern, as was stipulated in the State of Ghanaian Media report. As the report correctly points out, journalists must be protected, just as the public can be protected from misinformation by strong civil liability laws. Journalism provides us all a platform for informed discussion across a range of issues, including governance and corruption, environmental challenges, gender equity, youth engagement, and peace building. Only when journalists are at liberty to monitor, investigate, and criticize policies and actions can good governance exist. Today, we applaud the work of you, Fourth Estate, and your colleagues around the world. Thank you for the important role you are fulfilling to keep people informed. As we mark this 30th anniversary, we call on stakeholders to refocus on freedom of expression as a vital precondition for the enjoyment of all other human rights. As Thomas Jefferson once said, our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost. Thank you.
A round of applause for Her Excellency Elliot, Virginia Elliott. Thank you very much from the U.S. Embassy. Thank you for that. We'll be taking a brief break. But let me go ahead and introduce the national executives of the Ghana Journalists Association. Vice President Linda Santier-J, if you are here, let's acknowledge you. Dominic Noji, National Organizing Secretary, if you are here. Treasurer Audrey Dekalu, if you are here. Thank you very much for all your hard work. We'll be taking a brief break. Police band, if you're ready. If you're not ready, we can proceed. But if you are ready, you give us a breather, because we're dealing with broadcast time. If you're ready, you give us a short break. Short. Kofi Yeboah, if you are here, General Secretary. Couldn't have missed you. General Secretary, Kofi Yeboah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Police Band. We'll take a brief break. We'll be right back. Thank you very much, Police Band, for that. Let's give them a round of applause for serenading us with some tunes, Ghanaian tunes. Thank you very much for that. Let me go ahead and note that this program has been sponsored by ADB and is represented here by Mr. Mohammed Ali, his Marketing and Communications Manager, ADB. Mr. Ali, ADB, a round of applause for them. Thank you very much. We are continuing with the remarks for today. Mr. Charles Abani, if you are here, yes, you are. Thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Charles Abani, he's actually His Excellency, UN Country Coordinator. Thank you very much, Mr. Abani. Thank you.
The chairperson of this occasion, the representative of the Minister of Information, the chairman of the National Media Commission, Justice Ajay, I have to call you personally as a Justice of the Court of Appeal, the representative of the US Ambassador, my sister, the High Commissioner for South Africa, the Deputy EU Ambassador, Canada's representative, Abdou Diallo, the head of UNESCO, and other UN agencies here present, Albert Dumfort, the GJA's dynamic president, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and without omission, my very good friend, Reverend Lawrence Tete. Good morning to you all on this great day. I'm pleased to be here to commemorate World Press Freedom Day and to first echo Abdul's congratulations, thanks, salutation, and recognition for all the work that you do. The theme, as many have rightly pointed out, of really freedom of expression as a driver of all other human rights, really places at the fore the primacy of a healthy democracy and free speech as the foundational pillars upon which a healthy media environment is built. Democracy and free speech go hand in hand. Democracy allows the free exchange of ideas, opinions, the peaceful transfer of power, the ability of citizens to hold their leaders to account, free speech, and an opportunity and mechanism to express ideas. Freedom of speech is the actual means by which we do that. It is the mechanism that allows the marketplace of ideas to flourish. In a healthy society, both democracy and free speech are essential. Calling for the revitalization of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights during his address to the Human Rights Council in February this year, the Secretary General reminded us that we ought to remember that that framework is a solution to all contemporary challenges, political, social, economic, and cultural. Freedom of expression encompasses the freedom to seek, receive, impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Over time, this freedom of expression has been reflected in several regional human rights instruments, including the Africa Charter on Human and People's Rights. And as many have said here, freedom of expression calls for an open yet responsible information sharing regime guaranteed by law and is an essential characteristic of people-centered democracy and development. Unfortunately, we are seeing threats to these principles in many parts around the world. We're seeing the rise of authoritarian governments that seek to suppress free speech and limit democratic freedoms. We are seeing the spread of disinformation and propaganda, which undermine the very foundations of democracy. fueled by technology and social media, and now really accelerated by the whole phenomenon of artificial intelligence. And if there's one area that I really call on the media to really become more involved in, it is on the rise of AI. Because today we are seeing tools like ChatGPT actually having their own opinions, when actually these are not the opinions of anybody. And the speed with which machines are learning how to become intelligent may soon override the whole concept of press freedom. And so this is an area for great vigilance on this important pillar on which our collective freedoms rest. But we should not despair. We as stakeholders will continue to fight and use all tools at our disposal. Just a few weeks ago, and recognizing the importance of this, UNESCO brought together stakeholders from across this continent in Zimbabwe to renew our commitments to freedom of expression, access to information, and the important issue of the safety of journalists. We must continue to push for strong legal protections for free speech and for the independence of the media. We must continue to support individuals and organizations who are working to promote these principles. The UN in Ghana, through its agencies with varied mandates, and with UNESCO in the lead on this important aspect of our work, is hugely contributing to this and will continue to do so, especially in the wake of signing its new cooperation framework with Ghana just last Friday. Freedom of expression and sustainable development goals are closely related. Freedom of expression as a fundamental human right plays a critical role in advancing sustainable development. Chairperson, honorables, freedom of expression allows individuals and communities to voice their opinions and concerns, participate in decision-making that affects them, and continue to deepen the process of institutional strengthening. This is essential to achieving SDG 16, which aims to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels through the free flow of information and ideas, which is essential for promoting innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. These are critical components for economic growth, social inclusion, and cohesion, and peace. And all these are key to Ghana's own vision of a wiser nation. And remember, wiser stands for wealthier, inclusive, sustainable, environmentally sound, and resilient Ghana, as it strives towards its ambition of self-sufficiency and ultimately a Ghana beyond aid. As we concurrently celebrate Ghana for its progress in this area, we must emphasize that much remains to be done. Notably, Ghana has just slipped on the global rankings on press freedom. The importance of press freedom cannot be overemphasized at a time when the world, including Ghana, faces so many challenges, and we must rise up to this. Today is an opportunity to renew our collective commitment to dig deep and to work on the priority areas, especially focused on SDG 16.10, which quotes, ensuring public access to information and the protection of fundamental freedoms in accordance with national legislation and international agreements, and also including support for the UN Plan of Action. Permit me at this juncture to read the Secretary General's message, and I quote, "For 3 decades, on World Press Freedom Day, the international community has celebrated the work of journalists and media workers. This day highlights a basic truth. All our freedoms depend on press freedom. Freedom of the press is the foundation of democracy and justice. It gives us all the facts we need to shape opinions and speak truth to power. And it's in this year's theme reminds us press freedom represents the very lifeblood of human rights. But in every corner of the world, freedom of expression and freedom of the press is under attack. Truth is threatened by disinformation and hate speech, seeking to blur the lines between fact and fiction, between science and conspiracy. The increased concentration of the media industry in the hands of a few, the financial collapse of scores of independent news organizations, an increase in national laws and regulations that stifle journalists are further expanding censorship and threatening freedom of expression. Meanwhile, journalists and media workers are directly targeted on and offline as they carry out their vital work. They are routinely harassed, intimidated, detained, and imprisoned. At least 67 media workers were killed in 2022. This is an unbelievable 50% rise over the previous year. Nearly 3/4 of women journalists have experienced violence online, and 1 in 4 have been threatened physically. 10 years ago, the United Nations established a plan of action for the safety of journalists to protect media workers and end impunity for crimes committed against them. On this and every World Press Freedom Day, the world must speak with one voice. Stop the threats and attacks. Stop detaining and imprisoning journalists for doing their jobs. Stop the lies and disinformation. Stop targeting truths and truth tellers. As journalists stand up for truth, the world stands with them. And I close that quote. On this note, and in a responsible manner, I wish you all a wonderful celebration and express solidarity with all journalists and media workers in their quest to deepen and strengthen Ghana's democratic journey. I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abani. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. A round of applause for him. UN Country Coordinator, Mr. Charles Abani. Before we take a message from Mr. Van Gelder, the Deputy EU Ambassador, let me introduce to you Dr. Nana Sefachum, who is here with us. Dr. Nana Sefachum, thank you for being here to support us. Mr. Nila Esoa, Kentiman from Pringpag, thank you for being here to support us. Chairperson of the 2022 GJ Awards Committee, Antia Piesa, thank you for supporting us. Betty Apau, formerly with the GBC, thank you for being here to support us. Mr. Yao Opoku Ejepon, Director Radio GBC, thank you for being here as well. We'll go ahead and take a message from Peter Smith Van Gelder. If you are here, Peter Smith Van Gelder, His Excellency, the Deputy EU Ambassador to Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for pronouncing my name correctly. I know it's difficult. And the advantage of being one of the later speakers is I stand on the protocol observed and so beautifully read just by my friend Charles Abani. As my grand frère Diallo, this is my 4th in a row, so we can now dream each other's speeches and remarks. But I'm happy to be here. Dear friends of the media, thank you for giving me the floor briefly today. Bear with us, you have heard a lot already, I'll be short. I am a former speechwriter for ministers in my country, and as such have benefited firsthand from the right to freedom of opinion and expression laid out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 75 years ago. This is a constant priority for EU human rights action. This year, we emphasize that freedom of expression is an essential right in itself, but also a right essential for other human rights to be upheld and promoted. For without freedom of speech, there can be no facts, no debate, and ultimately, no democracy. And this starts by protecting the freedoms of journalists, you all, the oxygen of democracy. Many journalists are vulnerable, not only in practical financial terms, but also in a more fundamental way. for their personal safety. Worldwide, they're being threatened, obscured, imprisoned, and even murdered. Without a free press, we can all agree there can be no free people. Press freedom is at stake in most parts of the world today. In a time where we need free press most, paradoxically, journalists seem less and less protected. Journalists face criticism, threats, and attacks across all continents, from Malta to Mexico, to Afghanistan, to Africa. And we should be clear, crime against journalists is crime against all. And this is, of course, not excluded to what we now call imprecisely the global south. It's also in my own continent, Europe. We're no stranger to these trends. Investigative journalists and truthful information both under threat within our borders. Journalists have been killed in Denmark, in Slovakia, and also in my home country, Netherlands, where Peter R. de Vries, a journalist, investigative journalist on serious crime, was killed in cold blood in the heart of Amsterdam. Today, our main challenge remains to fight disinformation, to fight also worldwide, globally, particularly Russian disinformation about its aggression in Ukraine. And we obtain the information to joint EU efforts to support Ukrainians to reclaim their sovereignty, their freedoms. So in general, what have we done to address these challenges? We keep adapting and improving our tools, most recently with, and I name 3. Firstly, the Commission recommendations on protection, safety and empowerment of journalists and media professionals in the EU to ensure working conditions. Secondly, the Media Freedom Act proposed in 2023 and under negotiation to facilitate the establishment and operation of media services in the EU in an effort to safeguard media freedom and pluralism. And lastly, guidelines on freedom of expression online and offline in EU external action. This we also promote here in Ghana. Thankfully, it's much easier here in a country where there is civic space, freedom of expression, media activity. They're all strong, vibrant and supported by government and independent structures alike. But, as elsewhere, challenges remain. This year, Ghana dropped 2 places in the World Press Freedom Index. Some have reminded us already of this. It is a sign that while freedom of expression remains integral to the country's democracy, some fundamental protections for free press are insufficient and they need to be strengthened. This includes, but not limited to, adequate protection for investigative journalists and justice for crimes perpetrated against them. But it also includes empowering journalists to provide independent and factual information to the public, avoiding misinformation and disinformation, and hate speech. The EU, of course, stands ready to support efforts in line with our strong political partnership with Ghana and shared belief in human rights and democracy. Recently, we launched a call for proposals for Ghanaian civil society, including protection and promotion of press freedom and investigative journalism. We are also actively engaged in strengthening media independence and mitigating hate speech around elections through both an ongoing project with IDAG and a future one to be carried out with WANEP, local and regional organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude. Through these initiatives, we want to empower institutions and reach higher in terms of protecting and promoting press freedom. And also we want to empower journalists to do what they do best, provide balanced facts, stir debates, defend democracy. Without their freedom, your freedom, to document and speak out, our own voices cannot be heard and our rights cannot be respected. The truth can arise when opinions collide, but this requires an independent, safe, and diverse media space, something we must keep striving towards, both on the European and African continents. Thank you all. Medasi.
Thank you very much. A round of applause once more for him, Mr. Peter Smith van Gelder, Deputy EU Ambassador to Ghana. Thank you very much for that. Let me go ahead and before we ready to listen to our minister, representing our minister, Mauli Segbefia from the ministry, let's acknowledge Ali Kukubo. Ali Kukubo, Kobla Ali Kukubo, formerly of GBC. Thank you for joining us today. Akwesi Ajiman, editor, Adom FM, Multimedia Group. If you are here, Akwesi Ajiman, thank you. Ben Imoro, formerly Deputy Director of ISD, a GJA member. If you are here, thank you very much, Mr. Imoro. Mrs. Tina Aforo Yabua, former editor of The Spectator. Thank you very much. President of ASWIM is here with us. Thank you. Thank you. President of ASWIM, thank you very much for joining us today. Cornelia Amwa, journalist, author of Women of Distinction, Ghana. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much. Mr. Segbefia, if you are here, thank you very much. Kindly come up the podium. Mr. Segbefia is from the Ministry of Information. He is representing the Honorable Minister Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. He will be addressing us. Thank you very much, Mr. Segbefia. Mr. Segbefia is Director of Policy and Programs at the Ministry of Information. Thank you very much, Mr. Segbefia.
Thank you very much, Madam MC. Madam Chairperson, Mrs. Gifty Afenyi-Dadzie, Justice of the Court of Appeal of Ghana, Justice Dennis Dominic Adjei, the Chair of the National Media Commission, Mr. Yao Wedu Ayebwafo, the President, Ghana Journalists Association, Mr. Albert Kwabena Jumfuo, the Country Director, UNESCO, Mr. Diallo Abdurrahmani, other UN organizations in Ghana, ambassadors and members of the diplomatic community, representatives of GIBA, Prempag, IPR, Editors Forum of Ghana, colleagues from the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of us, and I bring you a very warm greetings from the Minister of Information, Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, who would have loved to be here, but has been engaged with some other assignments. So I'm here to read this on his behalf. I wish to first of all express our sincere gratitude to the GJA for inviting the Ministry of Information to this important occasion to share our thoughts on the happenings in the media landscape in our dear country and how we can work together to develop this important sector for our common good. As a major stakeholder in the media space, our ministry is always thrilled to be associated with this annual event, which Ghana had a rare privilege of hosting in 2018, owing to our democratic credentials. And we still recall vividly the invaluable support the ministry received from all of you, particularly from the UNESCO, in hosting and organizing such a global event with great success. Once again, Ghana joins the rest of the world to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the World Press Freedom Day under the global theme, Shaping a Future of Rights, freedom of expression as a driver for all other human rights. We are also reliably informed that the day has been dubbed locally as freedom of expression, a driver for all human rights for Ghana's development. Madam Chair, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these themes cannot be overemphasized, and we also share in the belief that they form the bedrock of all other rights, and we should continue to do everything within our individual and collective power to ensure that they are realized in our everyday lives. As we are very much aware, and this has been quoted by previous speakers, Article 21 of our Constitution provides that all persons shall have the right to freedom of speech and expression, which shall include freedom of the press and other media. The media has been instrumental over the years in highlighting various rights that require attention for full enjoyment. The work of the media also in highlighting instances of abuse of some rights by sections of the society has led to redress in many instances. We urge the media to remain resolute on this path. The quest to have all citizens fully assess their economic rights is yet to achieve full effect, especially as the world faces dim economic forecasts following recent global challenges. While urging the media in Ghana to keep the spotlight on all human rights, we encourage an even sharper focus on efforts to ensure that the economic rights of citizens are fully actualized. Programs by states and not state actors to support the Ghanaian people build back faster after the economic challenges should be given deeper attention. We further encourage the media to give more media mileage to content that empowers citizens to fully enjoy their economic rights. Madam Chair, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you a bit of history. History informs us that the media first emerged in Ghana in the 19th century with the publication of the Gold Coast Gazette and Commercial Intelligentsia in 1822, essentially to provide information for civil servants and European merchants, and to help promote literacy rates and rural development among the local population, while encouraging unity with the Gold Coast government. Since then, as a country, despite the many challenges that have confronted the media, we have never looked back. Indeed, the framers of our 1992 Constitution had a special place for the media in our democracy and our national lives. Chapter 12 of the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana accentuates freedom and independence of the media. Over the years, we have also worked to deepen these freedoms by, for example, repealing the Criminal Libel Law and enacting a Right to Information Act aimed at providing a freer space for public discourse. Freedom of the press is legally guaranteed, as I have already pointed out. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, the promulgation of the 1992 Constitution has radically transformed the media landscape with the emergence of broadcasting services across the country. The creation of a liberalized media space with its attendant proliferation of television, radio, newspapers, and the use of the internet, the repeal of the criminal libel laws, and the passage into law of the right to information have all assisted in guaranteeing access to freedom and justice for the media and the public in general. This development has introduced a refreshing pluralism onto our media landscape and has opened access to new and diverse voices that have promoted democracy and participation in governance and development. It is therefore not surprising that despite the challenges, Ghana's media landscape has largely been highly rated by international experts as free and independent. Madam Chair, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, despite the expansion in numbers, diversity of ownership, pluralism, and the spread of media outlets in the country, our media has been bedeviled with a number of challenges. The State of the Media Report 2023, recently publicized by the Department of Communications of the University of Ghana, only reaffirms what we have all known all this while. To address these challenges, the Ministry of Information renews its commitment to support the media stakeholder groups such as the GJE, the Private Independent Newspapers Association, Communication Educators Platform, Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and the National Media Commission to implement Ghana's media support programs. The ministry further encourages all other stakeholders, including development partners, to support the media capacity enhancement program and the coordinated mechanism for the safety of journalists as sure instruments to better equip the media to discharge its mandate for our democracy. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, while we are celebrating freedom of expression and freedom of the media, it is also important to highlight a very disturbing phenomenon that has gradually crept into our media space, particularly our social media space, which has to do with misinformation, or put bluntly, fake news. This phenomenon has a tendency to erode all the democratic gains we have made as a country, if not handled with dispatch. It is important to note that other countries are calling for a tougher regulation of social media platforms in trying to deal with this problem. In March 2023, the Information Services Department launched the www.ghanatoday.gov.gh as a tool to fight this canker in our country. And the Honorable Minister urges all of us to make use of this portal to fact-check information before we use or before we share them. I would like to conclude by emphasizing that working together as stakeholders, we can continue to expand the frontiers of our freedom of expression. The Honorable Minister also wishes to repeat his call to our development partners to continue to support the ministry in achieving that. Thank you for your attention.
A round of applause for Mr. Segbefia. Thank you, Mr. Mauli Segbefia, representing the Minister of Information, Mr. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. Thank you very much. We are gradually coming to the climax of today's ceremony, which is the public lecture and flag-raising event to commemorate World Press Freedom Day 2023 here at the Ghana International Press Center. Let me crave your indulgence to acknowledge the Greater Accra Regional Chairman of the GJA, Charles Benoni Okine. If you are here, give us a wave. Gloria Hiaji, Executive Secretary, Geba, Teresa Owusu Ako, former head of News Radio GBC, Sethaya of GBC, Mr. Tom Dokenu, former editor, The Spectator, Felicia Asamoah of GBC, thank you for finding time to join us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going into a session where we will have a public lecture on freedom of expression, a driver of all human rights for Ghana's development. Now, this lecture will be delivered by Justice Dennis Dominic Adjei, his Justice of Court of Appeal of Ghana. Justice Dennis Dominic Adjei is a justice of the African Court on Human and People's Rights in Arusha, Tanzania, and Court of Appeal of Ghana. He is the Judicial Fellow of the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, University of London. He is a Fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. He was the Dean of Faculty of Law, Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, GEMPA. He is an adjunct professor of law in both University of Cape Coast Law Faculty and the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology Law Faculty. He is also a senior lecturer at the Ghana School of Law main campus, and he lectures in interpretation of law, land law, and conveyancing. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Justice Dennis Dominic Adjei is a former director of the Judicial Training Institute of Ghana He was the chairperson of the African Judicial Education Network on Environmental Law in Nairobi, Kenya. He has, to his credit, 6 textbooks. 6 textbooks. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podium to the man who will be delivering the highlight speech for today. Freedom of expression, a driver of all human rights for Ghana's development. Justice Dennis Dominic Adjei, Justice, Court of Appeal of Ghana. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Madam MC. May I take this opportunity to greet everybody and start my lecture by acknowledging the chair, who is a veteran journalist, and I will follow the suit of the chairman of the Media Commission. I will stand by the established protocols and proceed with the lecture. I proceed. The Constitution of Ghana is the supreme law of the land. It provides for the protection of fundamental human rights and freedoms. The Constitution and its provisions on fundamental human rights and freedoms are the most important forms of expression of commitment of the sovereign people of Ghana to the values of democracy, rule of law, freedom and stability, peace and justice, probity and accountability. So basically, I start with my introduction. And I have categorized the lecture into 7 thematic areas. The first one, the introduction. The second one, general fundamental human rights. Third, freedom of expression and international instruments on human rights. 4, justification for limitations on press freedom. 5, the use of freedom of expression to drive all human rights. 6, relationship between human rights and development. 7, freedom of expression, democratic governance. And then I conclude. I proceed. Freedom of expression is a fundamental human right that plays a vital role in promoting all other human rights and drives the development of a country. It allows individuals to express their opinions, advocate for their rights, and hold their governments accountable for their actions. Without freedom of expression, individuals will not be able to raise concerns about the issues such as corruption, discrimination, or human rights abuses. This could lead to a deterioration of human rights and hinder the progress of the development of Ghana. Everyone has the right to express themselves freely. This freedom must include the ability to express ideas freely across local, regional, and national boundaries without any intervention from the government, and to hold opinions. The licensing of broadcasting, television, or movie theater businesses should, however, not be prohibited. Since exercising these freedoms entails duties and responsibilities, exercising them may be subject to formalities, conditions, restrictions, or penalties required by law in a democratic society to protect national security, territorial integrity, or public safety, to prevent disorder or crime, to protect one's health or morals, to protect one's reputation or other people's right, to prevent the disintegration of the state or for other reasons. General fundamental human rights and freedoms. Fundamental human rights and freedoms are inalienable rights conferred on human beings by nature and must be jealously guarded to promote the dignity of man. The human rights and freedoms includes the protection of right to life, except where the life of a person is taken in accordance with law. the protection of personal liberty unless such liberty is deprived in accordance with procedure which is permissible by law. Respect for human dignity. Human beings are to be treated equally and protected from slavery and servitude or forced labor. Equality before the law aims at preventing discrimination. Protection of privacy of home and properties of persons unless the protection is waived in accordance with law. Promotion of fair trial for persons charged with criminal offenses. The general fundamental human rights, such as the right to freedom of speech and expression, freedom of thought and conscience, freedom to practice one's religion of choice, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of movement, right to information, subject to laws that are necessary in a democratic society. The other fundamental human rights expressly provided by the Constitution of Ghana, 1992, include property rights of spouses, administrative justice, economic rights, educational rights, cultural rights, women's rights, children's rights, rights of the physically challenged, and the rights of the sick. All the different fundamental human rights come together to form one fundamental human right, and each one influences the other. The other fundamental human rights are made up of one body with different parts and can be likened to what St. Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 12 to 26. I believe, as for the chair, she knows it by heart. Just as a body, though one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body. But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lack it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. That is the brief part of the quotation. I proceed. The fact that all the various human rights come together to form one body does not seem to suggest that they are of equal status, as admittedly, some of them are more relevant. All the human parts are equally important, but I can say that stomach drives all the other parts of the body, and it is more important than an arm or leg. A person cannot survive without a stomach, but a person can survive without a leg or arm. And I can emphatically state that the stomach is one of the main drivers of all the human parts. In the same vein, freedom of expression could be likened to stomach as the driver for human rights for Ghana's development. Freedom of expression and international instruments on human rights. During the Second World War, the ordinary and marginalized people were subjected to inhuman and barbaric treatments. There was a total shutdown of information as a result of this barbaric and inhuman treatment meted to the marginalized and the downtrodden in society. The powerful societies or countries or nations at that time saw the need to promote freedom of expression, to enable the individuals to gather, transmit, and publish information without feathers, to expose barbaric acts committed by some of the powerful nations. To achieve the above objective, the United Nations passed the Resolution 59 of 1946, which became known as Freedom of Information, in brief, FOI. And the purpose was to promote freedom of expression by clothing the individuals with authority to gather, transmit, and disseminate the information gathered without limitations. Subsequently, some international instruments were enacted to promote fundamental human rights that were seriously abused during the First and the Second World Wars. The main objectives of these instruments was to restore the dignity of man. The human rights instruments that were made after the Second World War are the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR, the American Convention on Human Rights, ACHR, and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, ACHPR. Let me talk about the Universal Declaration. Madam Chair, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was enacted in 1948, immediately after the Second World War, where human beings lost their dignity as a result of atrocities and barbaric acts committed by their fellow human beings, was to recognize all the inalienable rights of human beings, to promote freedom, justice, and peace in the world, and furthermore, to ensure that the ordinary person enjoyed freedom of expression, belief, and freedom for fear and wants, which had been the highest aspiration of human beings to drive all the other human beings. Admittedly, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was proclaimed as a soft law without a binding effect, but was to be recognized and observed by the peoples of the member states and their territories under their jurisdiction. When we say a law is a soft law, what it means is that it hasn't got the force of law, but it must be respected and observed. So in one sense, we are not saying that it binds you, but in another sense, it says that it is binding on you, you must respect it. The reason was that if it had been made a binding law, it would not have been signed by them. That was why it was proclaimed to be a soft law. Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is on freedom of expression, provides that, quote, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers, unquote. The above provision places emphasis on freedom of expression as a tool to drive the other human rights provisions. In dictatorial regimes, leaders suppress freedom of expression to enable them pursue their policies and agenda, which ordinarily couldn't have thrived where people were permitted to express freedom, to express themselves freely. In a democratic society where freedom of expression is suppressed, the other fundamental human rights are abused, as there are no avenues to expose those abuses to the public. Whenever freedom of expression is threatened, all the other human rights are suppressed, and that accounts for the reason for the criminalization of freedom of speech in some jurisdictions, particularly in military regimes. They will easily criminalize to put fear in everybody. Let's have a look at the ICCPR, the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, which Ghana is a signatory, has an elaborate provision on freedom of expression. Article 19 of the covenant provides that, quote, everyone shall have the right to hold opinions without interference. 2, everyone shall have the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers, either orally, in writing, or in print, in the form of art, or through any other media of his choice. 3, the exercise of the rights provided in paragraph 2 of this article carries with it special duties and responsibilities. It may therefore be subject to certain restrictions, but these restrictions shall only be such as are provided by law and are necessary. A, for respect of the rights or reputation of others. B, for the protection of national security or public order, or for public health or morals, unquote. That means it gives, but it says there are some feathers that must be praised. The ICCPR provides for legitimate restrictions on freedom of expression, and the limitations are in respect of those that will thrive in a democratic state, including the laws that will respect the reputation of others and protect national security, public order, public health, or morals. The ICCPR makes freedom of expression a pivotal to the sustainability of the other human rights, but it is not absolute. However, the parameters of the limitations have been provided. In effect, where a law is made to curtail freedom of expression, it must be within the limitations provided by the covenant. Freedom of expression, like other human rights, are not absolute and carries with it certain duties, and responsibilities, including the protection of public order, prevention of disclosure of information sought and obtained in confidence, and maintenance of authority of the courts to maintain peace and order, and finally, for the protection of the reputation of others. Also, Article 9 of the African Charter, which is on freedom of expression, has been oversimplified and will require a similar instrument such as the ECHR to provide for the limitations it intended to impose. The Charter provides in Article 9 as follows, and I quote, "Every individual shall have the right to receive information. 2. Every individual shall have the right to express and disseminate his opinions within the law," unquote. Here, we find it a bit difficult. That is why in the international court or the regional court, we resort to other international instruments to give explanation to what we mean by opinions within the law. The limitation to be imposed on freedom of expression is to be within the law, but the parameters of the law are not provided, as I said a moment ago. The two international instruments that can be resorted to are the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, and the ECHR, the American one. As the limitation to be imposed on freedoms of expression have been well articulated in them. The ECHR, which is the human rights instrument for the Europeans, has a detailed provision for freedom of expression, and being a human rights provision which is inherent in a democracy and intended to secure the dignity and freedom of man, it may be admitted and used under Article 33(5) of the Constitution of Ghana. It permits us to use other human rights provisions from other countries where we can demonstrate that they are inherent in democracy and they are intended to promote the dignity and freedom of man. And Article 10 of the European version provides as follows, quote, "Everyone has the right to freedom of expression. The right shall include freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers. This article shall not prevent states from requiring the licensing of broadcasting, television, or cinema enterprises. 2. The exercise of this freedom, since it carries with it duties and responsibilities, may be subject to such formalities, conditions, restrictions, or penalties as are prescribed by law and are necessary in a democratic society in the interest of national security, territorial integrity, or public safety, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of health or morals, for the protection of reputation or rights of others, for preventing the disclosure of information received in confidence, or for maintaining the authority and impartiality of the judiciary," unquote. The limitations that are placed on freedom of expressions are laws that are necessary in a democratic society in the interest of national security, territorial integrity, public safety, public health and morality, protection of reputation or rights of others, prevention of disclosure of information received in confidence, and any law that will maintain the authority and impartiality of the courts. Apart from the areas where freedom of expression is curtailed from diverse reasons, every citizen of Ghana, and particularly journalists, have an obligation to express opinion on any matter that will help develop the country. Justification for limitations on freedom of expression, which is a very serious debate. Madam President, one of the main aims of placing restrictions on freedom of expression is to safeguard the territorial integrity, public safety, and national security, and therefore, any expression that seeks to propagate the idea of war or advocate for national, racial, tribal, or religious hatred are forbidden, as they create anarchy and lawlessness and may affect national development. The other varied ground upon which limitations on freedom of expression may be imposed are matters of public safety, prevention of disorder or crime, and the protection of health and morals. Some examples of limitations placed on freedom of expression in the name of public health and morals are the criminalization of pornographic images of child, sexual extortion, and the use of computer for storing electronic data or transmitting or transmission relating to a child for sex. If you look at Section 62 and 64 of the Cyber Security Act 2020, Act 1038. This one, it is for public safety and morals. Why should you go and expose the nakedness of a colleague on a website? Article 13 of the American Convention on Human Rights provides that any propaganda of war, any advocacy of national and racial and religious hatred that constitute incitements to lawlessness shall not be permitted, as they are considered to be offenses under law. Freedom of expression is meant to expose wrongs and not meant to defame people. Therefore, any expression of opinion about a person that is false and fails to respect the rights or reputation of others is a civil wrong. Please here, I'm placing emphasis about the fact that a wrong or false publication about somebody that affects that person's rights and reputation is addressed in civil court and not to be criminalized. The main concern here is that defamation should not be criminalized and should remain a civil wrong, as appropriate remedies will be granted by the court, and the involvement of the state to seek for imprisonment is an attempt to curtail freedom of expression and should be avoided. The repeal of the criminal libel laws in Ghana by the Criminal Code Repeal of Criminal Libel and Seditious Laws, Amendment Act 2001, Act 602, including negligence and intentional libel, was an improvement in the freedom of expression space to leave defamation to be determined by the courts instead of using imprisonment as threat to freedom of expression. Recently, I heard the Media Foundation for West Africa complaining about 2 legislations in the country, and 3 or 4 of the speakers this morning mentioned Section 208 of the Criminal and Offences Act, 1960 Act 29, and Section 76 of the Electronic Communications Act, Act 775. They are the 2 ugly sisters of criminal libel, which needs to be addressed. Section 28 of Criminal and Offences Act 1960, Act 29 states as follows, quote, a person who publishes or reproduces a statement, rumor, or report which is likely to cause fear and alarm to the public or to disturb the public peace, knowing, having reason to believe that the statement, rumor, or report is false, is guilty of a misdemeanor, unquote. I'm also looking at Section 76 of the Electronic Communication Act, Act 755, and it states as follows, quote, a person who by means of electronic communication service knowingly sends a communication which is false or misleading and likely to prejudice the efficiency of life-saving service or to endanger the safety of any person, ship, aircraft, vessel, or vehicle, commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of not more than 3,000 penalty units or to a term of imprisonment not more than 5 years or to both, unquote. 3,000 penalty units means 3 times 12, 36,000 Ghana cedis. It must be noted that one of the limitations placed on freedom of expression is to protect public health and morality, which are the foundation of national stability. Quite often, some people argue that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights did not provide for any exceptions on freedom of expression. And why should other treaties and agreements on human rights place restrictions on freedom of expression? The circumstances under which the declaration was made was to restrict hate speech and any expression that would injuriously affect national security, public order, public health, or morals, and not to repeat the incidents which gave birth to the First and Second World Wars, and the subsequent treaties clarified the positions to disclose that freedom of expression, which is the touchstone of national development, is not an absolute right, but must be limited within democratic principles. The preamble to the declaration unambiguously provides that it was enacted to recognize the inherent dignity and inalienable rights of the human race to promote freedom, justice, and peace in the world, and therefore, by necessary implication, frowns on any act that would jeopardize freedom, justice, and peace in the world. The restrictions on freedom of expression are meant to promote freedom, justice, and peace. And journalists must acknowledge the fact that they work to promote freedom, justice, and peace, and will not undertake any activity that will destabilize the country. The legitimate test to restrict freedom of expression by the state within the aim of controlling powers of state is known as the three-part test. Now, it is the standard test that is used to determine whether law has been made within the law or not within the law. The first test is to ascertain the legitimacy of the restrictions imposed by the state on freedom of expression. The second test is to ascertain if the restrictions were imposed to pursue a legitimate aim. And the third test is to ascertain whether it is necessary to impose restrictions on the right to information. Any restrictions on freedom of expression that does not meet the requirements imposed by the three parties shall not be considered as legitimate restrictions and may be challenged in an appropriate forum for violating her international obligations. When we thought about international obligations, Ghana has executed the African Charter, the ICCPR, and it places limitations that you must observe them in your local courts. In the local courts where they fail to observe them, that is where after they have exhausted the local remedy, then they go to the African Court on Human and People's Rights. That our human rights were not observed by the national court, and therefore the state has failed to observe its international commitments. The maintenance of the impartiality of the court brings to fore the issue of contempt. Madam President, I'm talking about a very sensitive area, but I must address it. Civil contempt does not affect journalists because it affects everybody. That one means disobedience to an order of a court. Where a court gives an order, don't do this, refrain from doing, and you do. That one, it is disobedience to an order of a court, and we call it civil contempt. The most serious one is what we call the criminal contempt. But criminal contempt, usually people think it is at large. Criminal contempt is not at large. We have parameters regulating criminal contempt. Then a criminal contempt may be committed either in the face of court, which we call in facie curia, or outside the court, which we call ex facie curia, and must constitute any one of the following. So if it does not constitute any one of the following, then it is not contempt. An act that scandalizes the court or tends to scandalize the court. An act that impedes or prejudices pending proceedings, where a case is pending. Then you say something that this is the outcome of the case. If at the end of the day, the judge does not arrive at that conclusion, what happens? Insulting the court or a judge in a pending proceedings. Here, it does not mean that someone cannot insult a judge. But if it is in respect of a pending proceedings, an act that seeks to undermine or lower the authority of the courts, an act that prejudices or tends to prejudice or interferes or tends to interfere with pending proceedings, or an act that interferes or tends to interfere with or obstruct the administration of justice in whatever manner. These are the only grounds that constitute criminal contempt. Occasionally you hear arguments that criminal contempt hasn't got any border. Whatever you say, it is not true. It is regulated by law. One other restrictions imposed on freedom of expression that most people are not in agreement is what I've just said. Human rights instruments, that power of contempt takes away human rights. But the essence is that whenever there is any issue, we rush to the court. Why do we rush to the court? We rush to the court because the court can maintain peace and order, peace and freedom. And if we do not respect the authority of the court, what will happen if something happens? Then there will be anarchy. That is why in the wisdom of our forefathers, it started from the common law. Common law, then our constitution and all the international instruments, they talk about the fact that the court's authority must be respected for the court to maintain its impartiality, to maintain peace and order, peace and freedom. The power of the superior courts to commit for contempt to themselves to maintain impartiality of the judiciary, which is inherent in common law, as I said, has been reenacted in Articles 19(12) and Article 126(2) of the Constitution of Ghana. Article 19(2) of the Constitution reiterates the position that the superior court shall have the power to commit to themselves and punish persons for contempt, despite the fact that the act or omission constituting contempt is not defined in a written law and the penalty not prescribed. The parameters is what I gave. There are only 7 grounds. Madam President, I move to the use of freedom of expression to drive all human rights. I stated in the introductory part of this lecture that human rights are many, including the right to life, right to liberty and security, protection from slavery and forced labor, right to a fair trial, right to respect of private and family life, freedom of thought, conscience and religion, freedom of assembly and association, right to an effective remedy, derogation in time of emergency in accordance with obligations under international law, economic rights, educational rights, cultural rights and practices, women's rights, children's rights, rights of the disabled, and the rights of the sick. And almost all of them are driven by freedom of expression to remind people of those rights and further expose the persons who are violating those rights of the people, and in particular, the violations of the rights of the common people. In a country where people's rights are violated, the entire country will be stricken with fear and will require journalists and both persons to expose those abuses and enlighten the citizenry of their fundamental human rights, which have been suppressed. The sick, the disabled, workers, women, children have their specific human rights available to them. And it will require persons, including journalists, to impart the information to the said persons who are entitled to those rights and do not know of their existence or have those rights violated. The country requires bold and honest persons to disseminate information on all fundamental human rights, and in particular, the general fundamental human rights, such as freedom of expression, to receive and impart information on television, radio, and electronic means of communication without frontiers. Educate the people on their rights to freedom of assembly and association, freedom to practice any religion and to manifest such practice, and expose pastors and priests who are abusing the fundamental human rights of their congregations to seek redress against them. Freedom of assembly, including the right to take part in processions and demonstrations, freedom of associations, and freedom of movement. Quite often we talk about violations of fundamental human rights. What happens to our brothers and sisters who are being abused by some pastors and priests in the name of religion? Relationship between human rights and development. The United Nations Secretary General 2005 had this to say about the relationship between human rights and development. He stated that, quote, "We will not enjoy the development without security. We will not enjoy security without development. And will not enjoy either without respect for human rights," unquote. The above quotation shows the relationship between security and development. There is no gainsaying that freedom of expression drives human rights, and there is a linkage between freedom of expression and all other human rights, and therefore, criminalization of freedom of expression should be fiercely resisted. There is a direct relationship between human rights and development by the fact that human rights are at the center of development. And where human rights are not observed, it will negatively affect development. And the converse is the case, where human rights are protected and preserved. Where persons enjoy freedom of speech in an environment where there is no fear of intimidation, arrest, and prosecution, human beings who are the center of development increase productivity. In a country where right to life is not protected, there is no freedom of expression to expose abuses, the people work under fear and negatively impact on development. We have the Right to Information Act 2019, Act 989, which deals with the mode for which information may be obtained from a public institution or a private institution which performs public function or receive public resources, and it is aimed at making public institutions accountable. So in effect, everybody holding public office is accountable to the people. And how do we compel them to accounts? It is through freedom of expression. There are restrictions imposed on right to information, similar to that of freedom of expression. Otherwise, where there are no restrictions on right to information, and an information which is restricted by law is obtained, the information may be published or expressed to defeat the purpose of the restrictions imposed on freedom of expression. Every individual is entitled to the fundamental human rights and freedoms contained in Chapter 5 of the Constitution, subject to the rights and freedoms of others and for public interest. The preservation and protection of the individual's human right to promote the dignity of man is the highest attainment of human development. The overall development of Ghana will be incomplete without the protection of the fundamental human rights and freedoms of the individuals who are at the center of development. Article 41 of the Constitution is a very important provision, and it is found in Chapter 6. That is one of the provisions on the directive principles of state policy. And the chairman of the Media Commission alluded to this issue. Article 41 provides the duties and obligations of the individual, and if the individual whose rights and freedoms are safeguarded by the Constitution performs those rights and obligations imposed on them without fear of arrest or intimidation, in strict compliance with the Constitution, Ghana would establish a just and free state within a reasonable time. The directive principles of state policy require every individual to participate and enjoy political, economic, social, and cultural developments of the country, and the goals shall be achieved after the fundamental human rights and freedoms of the individuals have been fully realized. The individuals can fully discharge their obligations under Article 41 of the Constitution after their fundamental human rights have been fully realized and can be at the center of development to turn things around. The freedom of expression to drive all the other human rights to achieve the total development of the country requires concerted efforts of Ghanaians to discharge constitutional obligations imposed on them under Article 41 of the Constitution. The provision enjoins the individuals to, inter alia, promote the good name and prestige of Ghana, uphold the Constitution and the law, promote national unity, and live harmoniously with others, to respect the rights and freedom of others, to cooperate with lawful agencies to maintain law and order, to protect and preserve the environment, preserve and protect public property, and expose and combat misuse of public funds and waste, and pay their taxes honestly. We need freedom of expression to perform these obligations and duties imposed on us by the Constitution to perform. The fundamental human rights are equally important, but they require freedom of speech as the engine to drive them to promote a balanced development of the country. Freedom of expression is not absolute and requires restrictions, but shall be necessary only in a democratic society. Therefore, all legitimate restrictions imposed on freedom of expression in accordance with law shall be observed. Furthermore, the individuals who abuse the rights of freedom of expression to defame other people, attack matters relating to public order, national security, public health or morals, national cohesion, and stability should stop forthwith, as the restrictions are legitimate and provided to pursue a just cause for the entire citizenry. The other restrictions on freedom of expressions, which have been criminalized and touch and concern rights and reputation of others, should be decriminalized and be regulated by civil law, including the two provisions we mentioned not long ago. The repeal of the criminal law, which was one of the laws that criminalized some of the attack on the rights and reputation of persons, was made in accordance with law. Rule of law is fundamental to economic growth and development. Rule of law ensures that contracts, trade, or both local and international levels are enforceable, peace and security and the political stability of a nation are guarded at all times. To achieve economic and social cohesion and economic development, and to protect rights of persons. There is a positive correlation between rule of law, good governance, and peace and stability of a nation and economic development. Rule of law includes supremacy of the law, fundamental human rights, and equality before the law, which includes protection against discrimination, freedom of expression, and democratic good governance. Freedom of expression is crucial to maintaining an effective democracy and upholding human rights, as it also plays a crucial role in defending and other constitutional rights. There cannot be a free country or democracy without a comprehensive guarantee of the right to free expression that is upheld by independent and impartial courts. Freedom of expression is a right in itself, as well as a constituent for other rights protected under the basic laws of a country or the Constitution. Such expressions of freedom includes freedom of assembly. At the same time, freedom of expression can conflict with other rights protected by basic law or the Constitution of a country, such as the right to a fair trial, to respect the private life of others. When such conflict occurs, the court strikes a balance in order to establish the preeminence of one right over the other. The protection of freedom of expression is essential for the democratic political process and the development of every human being. Everyone has the right to freedom of expression in a democratic society. The right shall include freedom to hold opinions and receive and impart information. The ability to freely exchange information and ideas is crucial for Ghana's political climate and democratic framework. Without this freedom, meaningful free elections are not conceivable. In addition, a fully exercised right to free speech permits unrestricted criticism of the government, which is the key sign of a free and democratic society. The court enforcement jurisdiction requires it to give the fundamental human rights. The utmost consideration, that is one of the fundamental tenets of such society, one of the requisites for both an advancement of the group of every man, is freedom of expression. Conclusion. Freedom of expression is a driver of all human rights, should not be unreasonably restricted or impeded by criminal sanctions to lose its potency. As a means to drive other human rights for Ghana's development, freedom of expression as a fundamental human right plays a pivotal role in promoting all other human rights and driving development in Ghana by allowing individuals to express their opinion, advocate for their rights. Where individuals are free to express themselves, they can fight for their right to basic needs such as food, shelter, employment, roads, education, healthcare, and others. They can also advocate for their civil and political rights, including right to vote, freedom of assembly, and the right to a fair trial. Freedom of expression promotes transparency and accountability in government. It provides a platform for citizens to give feedback to the government on its policies and services. This feedback can lead to better resource utilization and improved service delivery, ultimately benefiting citizens. Freedom of expression promotes social cohesion and tolerance. When individuals are free to express their opinion and beliefs, it encourages open dialogue and debate. Overall, while there are varied concerns about potential misuse of freedom of expression, the benefits of protecting and promoting this right far outweigh the risk. It is essential to balance the protection of individual rights to freedom of expression with the need for public safety and national security, and to create policies that promote responsibility and ethical use of rights. It is also important to balance the right of freedom of expression with the need to protect the rights of others, including their privacy and intellectual property rights. This can be done through the use of laws, regulations that aim to prevent infringement on the right of the citizenry. Madam President, thank you. I'm done, and I appreciate your patience and tolerance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for him. Justice Dennis Dominic Adjei, Justice Court of Appeal. A round of applause for challenges our minds, our hearts, our thoughts, and everything. Freedom of expression, a driver for all human rights for Ghana's development. His speech will be available for those who need copies on all platforms. Thank you very much. We are about rounding up here in a minute. The next part of our celebration today, we will be hoisting the flag. If Dominic Hlonji, the organizing secretary, is here, Ghana Journalists Association, Dominic Hlonji and your team of chaperones will chaperone the various teams, His Excellencies, distinguished guests, gentlemen up there. Do that. Manasseh Azuri Awini, if you are here, Editor-in-Chief, 4th Estate, and then we'll go ahead and do the hoisting of the flag. Manasseh Azuri, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Madam Chair, distinguished guests. That was a very revealing lecture from a judge I've heard so many good things about, but has the opportunity to meet for the first time. I would just want to make a quick appeal to the government of Ghana. Apart from my work as a journalist, I also speak in journalism training institutions. And when you speak to young journalists or those under training, they tell you investigative reporting is an area they are unwilling to venture into. When you ask them why, they tell you it is dangerous. And they're right. But there's danger everywhere. The problem is that there is impunity in what happens when people harm journalists here. My appeal to the government of Ghana is to stop living in denial. When an investigative journalist was murdered in the Netherlands, the EU said this was an attack on democracy. An investigative journalist was killed in Malta, and it resulted in the resignation of the Prime Minister. An investigative journalist was killed in Ghana here, and the President of our Republic went to the Bar Conference and said this was not an attack on press freedom. If that is not, then what it is? Then the worst of it all is that just last year there was a program at the German ambassador's residence, and the Deputy Minister of Information was there and said we should be cautious in saying Ahmed Swale was a journalist. And her reason, the ministry had done their checks at the the NMC, National Media Commission, the GJ, and also Giba and others, and they did not find Ahmed Swale's name there as a journalist. This, I believe, is not helping in the fight against impunity. If we are not careful, it is going to get worse. Already, a good number of journalists are leaving journalism to the corporate world because the media doesn't pay. So if we're discouraging journalists or young people from getting into this kind of journalism, we can only get worse. So my appeal to the President of the Republic, the Minister of Information, and the government of Ghana, stop living in denial. The dangers are real. In the past, since 2017, I have reported a number of death threats personally to the police headquarters. Nothing came out of it. I've had to leave the country on 2 occasions, and I know other journalists who have gone through hell within this period. It is not fiction. The dangers are real. And on this day, my appeal to the President is that sit up and listen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manasseh, for that. We'll go ahead and have the police band give us an interlude. Very soft, very, very soft interlude, whilst we go ahead and do the hoisting of the flag. According to the hoisting of the flag, Minister's Rep, you will be doing the Ghana flag. So Dominic is going to lead the chaperones while they go to hoist the flag. So can we have the minister's representative over to the pole to hoist the Ghana flag? Also, we're going to have the GJA president, Mr. Albert Dumfor, and the chairperson for today, who doubles as the former GJA president, Mrs. Gifty Afenyi-Dadzie, will be doing the GJA flag. And then UNESCO flag, UNESCO boss, Mr. Diallo. You do us the honors on the UN flag. Now, all the people on the podium will join. All dignitaries on the podium. All dignitaries on the podium do us the honors as we hoist the flag. If the band can give us a melody, soft melody, as we hoist the flag. Thank you, police band, for that. Today is our day, a day for journalists. As we hoist the flags, is a reminder to us that we are committed to press freedom, responsibility journalism, respect for human rights. In 1993, the UN General Assembly proclaimed May 3 as World Press Freedom Day. Ladies and gentlemen, this proclamation marked the beginning of substantial progress towards enabling a free press and freedom of expression around the world. We in Ghana today, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, are happy to be part of this success story of celebrating 30 years of freedom of expression around the world. Congratulate yourselves, fellow journalists. Pat yourselves at the back for doing a good job, especially for journalists in Ghana and for our veteran journalists, our respected media folks of the Inky fraternity who blazed the trail for what we are enjoying today. Pat yourselves at the back. Pat yourselves at the back as we raise and hoist the flag. Thank you very much, Minister's representative, for hoisting the Ghana flag. Please to move. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Police, as you move. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's go ahead. Thank you very much. Ghana Police Band. World Press Freedom Day 2023, shaping a future of rights, freedom of expression as a driver for all human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, the international community faces multiple crises, conflicts and violence, persistent socio-economic inequalities, driving migration, environmental crisis and challenges to the health and well-being of people all around the world. While disinformation and misinformation online and offline continue to seriously impact on the institutions underpinning our democracy, the rule of law and human rights. As we hoist the Ghana flag, the GJA flag, and the UNESCO flag, let's remember that as journalists, we have a responsibility to uphold freedom of expression and also uphold its responsibility. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Ghana Police Band, thank you. Let's remember that this program has been aired live on Atinka TV, Joy News, and other media partners. This program has been aired live on Atinka Television, Joy News, and other media partners. Remember.
An enjoyable time here at the Press Center. I will just entreat you that whatever we've learned here today, we should put them into practice. We have been emboldened, we have been empowered to go and hold public accountable. In fact, to hold the government accountable to the people and also the people accountable to ourselves. We've been told that we can work freely. There are parameters. If you listen to Sir Dennis, his lordship, as a practitioner and as an academic, with the 7 thematic areas, you will realize that we have a role to play in the society. One here who is a journalist, a media practitioner, a presenter, that Ayuko, and let's celebrate our day by thinking through what the nation needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Mrs. Gifty Afenyidazi. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Okay. We would have everyone move over to the exhibition. And at the book exhibition, we'll be having books in the likes written by Kofi Yeboah, Kenel Atentande, Manasseh Azune Awene, Cornelia Amwa, Eric Aite, Professor Kwame Kakari, Madam Ajwa Yeboah Ferry. Special mention for your support to the Ghana Journalists Association, especially for today's program. Her book is on exhibition as well. Do her the honors and go and have a look. Thank you very much, South African Ambassador, actually South African High Commissioner, for donating the books to us. Let me quickly acknowledge Hope FM, Success FM, CTFM, Joy News, Radio Universe, DJ TV, UTV, Star FM, Oman FM, Metro TV, GBC News, Kantanka TV, Home Base TV, Pan African Television, Peace FM, Oyerpa TV, Faculty TV, African News, Ghana Web, Graphic Online, Daily Guide, Asasi Radio, Ghana News Agency, The Lead News, Inc., Pink FM, Adom TV, Top TV and Radio, Daily Graphic, New Crusading Guide, TV Africa, Atinka TV and Atinka FM, Onia TV, TV3, Daily Statesman, Arise FM, Sunshine News, Trace News. World Press Freedom Day 2023. Thank you all very much. As Reverend Lawrence Tete prepares to usher us, we want to thank you all for spending almost your day with us. Thank you for your time. We will call on you again, and you know that you will support us. Don't forget to go to the book exhibition. Pick a copy, read a book today. Reverend Lawrence Tete, kindly pray and usher us home.
Madam Chair, help me do one thing here. I want the police band to play We Shall Overcome for us, and I think that would be summing up. The lecture we had from Justice Ajay, wonderful, wonderful. So no, we shall overcome. Yes. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. I think we shall overcome the press freedom, not just in Ghana, but in the entire continent of Africa, and indeed the world at large. And I sang this song because history tells us that a few hundreds of years ago, our grandfathers and our grandmothers sang it on their way to unknown lands. And even though it took that long, at least today we can boast and can be proud of a black man or a black woman leading nations of the world, like even America, that we never thought it would be. Shall we be on our feet, please? Father, we thank you for press freedom. We thank you that we will be responsible with our utterances, that would not bring any hate speech. We thank you that it will be a collective responsibility from our political leadership, from our traditional leadership, from our cultural leadership, our socioeconomic community, and also our religious leadership. I pray that how our pressmen and women will be so responsible in their reportage, and that we will have a better and a safe Ghana. I pray that God, that ladder that we seem to have climbed down and lower on, in our rating and our media space, we will be restored, and that we will see a responsible, united front in our media practitioning. I bless every work here, and even bless the president of Ghana Journalism Association and his entire team, that in the coming year, we will hear good reports, and that even those that have lost their lives and has been threatened will even be recaptured, and we will restore Ghana to where we belong to. For without a better press and media, there cannot be a better nation democracy. We bless and sanctify everything to your glory, and we say deep in our hearts, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Lawrence Tete. On behalf of the President of the Ghana Journalists Association, definitely. Thank you very much, Ghana Police Band, for serenading us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been a wonderful day. On behalf of the President of the Ghana Journalists Association and the entire executive body of the Ghana Journalists Association, we'd like to thank you all for your time spent with us. It's been a worthwhile celebrating 30 years of press freedom, and Ghana joined the world to celebrate that. On behalf of myself, Rebecca Ikpe, thank you all for joining us here at the Ghana International Press Center. Go ye and remain ambassadors of press freedom. Let's head to the Gifty Afeni Hall. President of the Ghana Journalists Association, Mr. Jumfo, will lead the team over to the exhibition to see the books that we have on display.